Welcome back, friends. Today's conversation is a conversation. We are talking with Natalie Moss today. She is a part of the mentorship group. However, I'm bringing her on because she has a very unique perspective around human design and music and frequency and leaning into all of that. So I am going to just open it up and really welcome Natalie here, but also have her go deep into that right variable mind and share with us some of those really intricate things that are there. Okay. So Natalie, thank you for being here. I can't wait to have a conversation around music. I would like to be educated on that a little, and human design and really connecting the two, but also what was your pathway when you found human design? What went on there? So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me so much. And I love being part of the mentorship, and it has been, so pivotal to particularly the last, I think I counted, it's been 15 months. We've been joining
Mm-hmm.
each month, which is, significant, and it's been wonderful. So yeah, what was the pathway? So yeah, right brain, I've got to call it back in. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about well, I had in mind, okay, so I know I'm right brain, so I know I can go off into a whole lot of threads. So I made a whole bunch of notes for myself. I basically been making notes for like 10 days. I probably have about 12 pages of notes, and I'm like, I don't know, but hopefully I gather some of that. And I've got the pages next to me, so I'm like, hopefully you guys just find your way back in.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, but so yeah, it is hard to collect back in. We were talking
Yeah.
just before we started recording,
Yeah.
and I was already going off on tangents.
So kind of share your path up to human design and then recognizing human design and then leaning into it. How about that?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was young, okay, natural or natural or natural. That's one of the things that was coming to me that I was saying. I've always been had natural inclination to seeing the broader scope of things in life. I was born like that. I was born like looking up at the sky and seeing the immenseness and the depth of the sky, and even being like afraid, feeling the fear of being like so tiny in like this big space, the unknown and the unseen, and just I was really conscious of looking for answers, or trying to find something that made sense, and like what was this picture that I was seeing. um, I've always been a writer, and a musician from a young age. I was playing music. I think I learned piano and things when I was like a preteen, but once I hit sort of 15, especially when the hormones activated, I went completely crazy. In my third line, in my 6-2 initial 30 years experience. But yeah, music really came in. And I guess like that started to provide as well some like a space to express and to reflect, to
Mhm.
get some of those emotions going through, like whether I knew it or not at the time. Like that's something that I'm more aware of now looking back, is the processing that was going on when I was really purging. I don't know, I've come through into this life with a lot of baggage, a lot of heaviness, a lot of stuff to sort, almost like you spent all of your other lives like avoiding what you've got to face, and so now we're going to hit you with it because you've got like it's your last go. And that's a bit of pressure. I didn't always think that. That's actually like a bit more of a recent, like some feedback that I've had, or some readings that I've had that are suggested that could be the case, and that's very interesting. And I've probably diverted a million times. I'm writing on Medium, so I've always been a writer as a musician, writing lyrics and things like that. But more recently, I've sat down to have a Medium account, so I'm writing like one article a week, and it's really another tool that I'm using to like sort of sift through these stories, to sift through 33.6 Sun, sift through all of my life stories. Because I was paying such attention through everything. I have very clear vision and sense of these moments in my life, like almost every day. The places I went, the people that I saw, like the parties I was at, in environments which were going to pull something out of me, that were going, or put something in, like, and these were parties where there were a lot of musicians and we were hanging around, and it was dark lights and it was immersive. Like, I've always been drawn to these environments that are very like sensitive sensory, um yeah, like moody lights and the way moody things feel, and just interesting people, but also been super alone during that journey. Like, I've had this insulation around me. I've got gate 40 in there, 33.6 is, super private and disassociated. um so I've managed to kind of hold this space around me while I moved through these environments and moved through these experiences, and just noticed and watched and absorbed, and like learned sorry about that, learned and upgraded. And on the medium, where I'm writing, I'm sort of talking through, I'm sifting through all of these stories. um,
Mm.
and yeah, music's just always been a theme. um, I'll keep talking about, like, I guess, like, when I was 15 or so, I was reading Buddhism sort of texts, really
Mm.
got into, or had it just resonated about past lives and reincarnation and karma, and it all made a lot of sense to me. And there was some really beautiful things that I got to learn early on. So this is me 15 years old, I think. It's like, we're talking 1996 or something. um, about the mind and the clutter of the mind. And if we have too many decisions in the mind, how that creates all of these pathways and lines off into, here and there or whatever. So I had this early message, like, not to get too distracted. But it's funny because I am highly, highly distracted. um, and so, that kind of, it did go out the window, but also, like, I have the knowledge as well. So I had something to compare to, if that makes sense. So I could know that, what I had to pull back to, and I have open crown, open ajna. So, I know now, like, having that visual of the mechanics of the total openness of flow, and to be cautious about what goes in, and what I pick up and what I latch onto. Like, and, I've also had this whole, journey with non-attachment, which is still going on, like, but not gripping tightly to beliefs and to things. Okay, where am I up to? Buddhism,
Love it. Yeah.
tarot, a bit of astrology and things, like, in those early years, music as expression. And I guess, like, if we do look at my chart, it's like I just had this, I don't know, music was just like, I just had blinders on. I was like, this is what I want to do. I would see myself playing on stage. I would see these songs. The other side of it is that, the individual, and that 23 that's there. I think I've always had a natural talent for writing songs, but my performance and my style and my execution was not always very good. And it took turning up again and again and again to start to refine that practice. I had to develop my voice. I'm not like a belter. I'm not like a Mariah Carey. Someone with a huge strength and capability. But, I was singing. I was doing like a performance for someone last week, and they were like, "There's so much vulnerability and intimacy," and, like, that's been more the thing that people pick up on, because it is so emotive. It does, like, it is. And I can recognize that now as well. I guess when I say that, that's not to be like inflated, but it's just, I know that I've worked through to find that, because when I first sang, it was rough as guts, and it was hard to hold notes. I had to really practice holding notes and understanding how my diaphragm worked, and the physicality of pushing sound up and not overdoing it, not over cranking it. That's like, the physical kind of technical stuff. Um, Yeah, but I was, the 23 is really interesting. I always point to that because I wrote very, like, my lyrics were quite disjointed as well. I wasn't the type of writer that was like, okay, I'm going to write a song about this, that a thing that happened. I'm going to tell that story. I wasn't like that at all. It was, how things sounded. It was linguistics based. It was like, I'm going to play this rhythm, and rhythm's always been huge for me. So I have a rhythmic guitar playing style, which is very like me. And when I sing along to that, it's like the words write themselves based on how I want to sound, like how the tone comes out, how the mouth moves, and what complements that rhythm. So it's kind of, I don't know if that's back to front, but I just, that's how I want to do things. So
Hmm. Hmm. What I appreciate is how you talk about the like environments that you're around. Um, I get it, the nodes are the environment, but I also look that this 22 has such a deep bridging capacity. And that 22 can go to these depths, right? I see a lot of grief, a lot of very deep
mhm.
melancholic grief kind of, and what I hear you say when you talk about these environments, and it's very they're acoustic, but they're very dark. They're very in that space. I see a lot of that in the 22. So it's very interesting to see like what you picked up in that so that you can teach other people with that 11 and 12 along your nodes. Yeah, beautiful. So when you talk about your family and the like it's kind of like a family practice kind of music, right? Music kind of is a part of the entire family. Would you say that?
We have had that when we come together like that, it's not been consistent, but it is how I was brought up initially, like, especially in my formative years. My dad was playing guitar and singing, and he like, it's still, in my opinion, has great music taste. He's 77 now, and he still like puts headphones on and listens to, he'll listen to Post Malone, and just the breadth of musical genres and times, and just good music. So I guess he did have a bit of that influence, and mum always got on the tambourine and just kind of danced around. Mum's been a dancer, ballroom dancer, and dad's got dancing in him. And then my sister, like later on, we've got 10 years apart. So when I was playing music, it probably took her a little while to catch up because we've got such a gap. But she's plays guitar as well and does covers and sings. So there are occasions when we come together, and Dad will put a set list together, and he'll get all the notes, and he'll write it all out and put it on a board, and then we just like have a few practices, do it together, and then we film, like the Partridge Family. That's what happened like during the lockdowns and things that happened. That was a way of reconnecting or staying connected and connecting to people, family overseas. And that definitely is some of the most joyous times. We did like a cover of the Beatles' "Don't Let Me Down," and it was
Mm.
like the middle of summer, so it's hot, and we all put on, like, got all these fluffy jackets out of the cupboard and went out onto the porch in the backyard and put on our fluffy coats, and mum like filmed us all like pretending to be the Beatles. Like, I love that so much. That's really like, that really sings to my heart like that. Yeah, I'll get little tears. I'm a teary
Mm.
person.
Love it.
It's
That's
beautiful.
amazing. So
It's very
beautiful.
precious. It's very, very
Hmm.
precious. And I think gratitude's one of the key things that is, a process of learning how to be super, super grateful. And I was talking to Tim in the mentorship about the beauty and how there's just like so many moments, all of the moments in life that you can appreciate for how precious and mystical they are. The
Mm.
opportunity to be here in this meat suit is
Yeah,
actually profound. And
I
maybe
would
that's part
totally
of a
agree.
perspective of me thinking that it's my last trip, because I'm like, if this is my last trip, I better like appreciate it.
Yes, yes. So I want to go a little deeper into like the natural flow that you talk about. This capacity to just lean in and be in that space and allow for that natural frequency to just flow through you, but also um, like in the music that you create. So anybody that's here, there's going to be a connection point for Natalie in the description. And Natalie created this amazing meditation. And of course, I'm a little biased because my environment is shores. So it has a lot to do with the ocean and the water and that kind of stuff. And there is just this tangible frequency that you bring to that. Now, do you have like a routine that you do to get into that flow? Like this 1949 love ceremony? Is there a ceremony? Like, what is it that it looks like for you to just lean in and be there?
Hmm. Yeah, I do like ceremony, but I am a manifesting generator, so I cut corners for sure. But I always have, like, a candle or, something to kind of create scent. I do love Palo Santo or I guess I'm
Mm,
mountains as well. So like I having smoke, I love to have smoke around me. And to smoke things. But it's not just a candle. I'm like it's a candle I made. And it has flowers in
mm,
it from flowers I found, like or
mm,
dried flowers that I dried. I guess like my my practice is to have all of these I guess the organic things that it's the mindfulness too, I guess, and I just like I collect things. If I have the flowers, I always get all of the petals off and dry them, and then they kind of sit with me. And this might be a bit micro, might be a bit detailed, but I guess it is, it's having these things. It almost like carries for me personally, like it just carries
mm,
through this charge or this energy that I've and the care. So I've put care, love, and it's patience and it's time, like that sort of stuff. And then for me, when I want to go sink into the experience of a place, which is how I did that meditation, because I was having these amazing immersive experiences. And I'll talk to that in a minute. But I guess my preparation then is quite quick on the day because I've done all of this supportive stuff around me, and I sleep like in a room that has all of this stuff around me. So I have this intention, I suppose, of charging everything around me with maybe it's my own energy. I don't know. And then I can then go off and in terms of that specific meditation, like I was saying, it was because I was pretty much having transcendental experiences in these waters, and they're just I know it's something, again, talking to Tim, like we can't, some of these things, the feelings that we have, you just got very hard to explain and to take people
mm,
there. But I do follow my strategy and authority as closely as I can. I think that's part of the flow for me, is trusting that guidance, and especially with my emotional wave. And that has been a huge, I would say, improvement, I guess, to things in the last couple of years, letting that wave slow me down, and not, over acting too quickly on anything, but just always like, wait, wait, wait. And then in doing that, I sort of just end up noted like being on the beat of the time. Like when things are correct for me, I make the move and there's no resistance, and it just feels easy and obvious and natural. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can go do that today. There's I do scheduling, but I 100% will just move things based on how the vibe is. Um, and yeah, so I followed that natural response in order to create the meditation. It was also a prompt within the mentorship. And so I love those prompts. That helps me to give me something to respond to. So it just felt very natural. And then I guess maybe it's the nine. of clearing things out of the way. So when I actually want to record, so I'm sharing my living with other people at the moment. So we
Hmm.
need to navigate the space. And when I have something important to do, I mean, and it's probably my 34 as well, because I'm just like, I have something to do. I need you to leave the space. I'm very like, is there something that you can go do? I'll negotiate this time and this space, and I just know that when I've got that window and I just can sink in, I close my eyes, it's my senses meditation. I close my eyes and I just pull through everything from my body. Like it comes from my center, it comes up my arms, it comes from outside, and I can just close my eyes and return to the feeling in my cells, which is
Hmm.
how I felt when I was in the water. Because when I was in the water, seeing the sun, feeling the earth with the mountain behind me, like I felt that ecstaticness where every cell in my body just kind of flowered, fluorescence of the 15, just like
Yeah.
opens to receive. And I'm like taking it all in and I'm like, gonna use this later. And I can call on it anytime. And I guess the more I practice that mindfulness and like absorbing it, soaking it, and storing it, the more I can recall it and pull it back and call it in, when I'm actually in a studio environment and I'm about to record something. Um, and doing the practicalness of it. And when I did record that, I went there. I was there. I was as good as there. You know, I
Hmm.
I like to be there, but I can call on that. Yeah. And I guess that's something that I really enjoy doing. And I feel like that's something, you being Shores, like I love the fact that um yeah, resonated on a level for Shores environment. And I wonder like, what other environments or what other, places or feelings that I might be able to go and like pull that same thing through for. But I will follow my response and, see what comes next.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I could see you, like, walking into a cave, walking to the top of the mountain, being in the kitchen and the alchemy of the kitchen, and, just sitting in your local market space and just absorbing that, right? Because again, it's like, what's the busyness and the intricacies of a marketplace that really lighten people up and they can be mindful in that space. And that I think is for me, I think that's the magic, is to recognize that no matter what's happening on the outside, we do have the capacity, exactly what you just said, to drop into the sensation of that yummy elevated frequency, and it is
Mhm.
always available to us,
Mhm.
right? And you get to teach that. Again, meditation, right? That sense of meditation. You are teaching how to quiet the mind no matter what's happening. It's a part of who you are.
Mhm.
So before we press record, Natalie, you were sharing a little bit about like this, you know, I don't love saying it, but like the darker energies as a child, right? And recognizing
Mhm.
there is some density there, and that
Yes.
density actually created a lot of curiosity for you.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna just take your chart off here. Everybody sees it now, and they kind of get a sense of you. And I just want you to just walk us all through that, because you started to walk me through that before I pressed record. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. We got to reverse this and go back. We got to have this on the recording. So play around in that a little bit for me. Share that experience, because I think a lot of people go through that.
Yeah. No, it does feel, yeah, it does feel like that is a thing to share because um yeah, so I still can't remember where I started, but like I came in, to this world with this expansive kind of view of things on this search, on this journey, already curious, but when I hit those, formative teenage hormonal years, um, I was, I would say, I was attracted to, uh, to grime, to grit. Like that was, it was the 90s. It was or the tail end of the 90s. And it was all about grunge music. So of course, like I'm listening to grunge music and things that are like um reflecting something within me, or maybe people I think guess they're like, is it creating it or is it reflecting it? Like I don't know, but I think it's kind of like the planetary cycle thing as well, of the generations and the outer planets and how we're all kind of moving in that. um and so I was definitely attracted to things that were kind of like starting to pull up these dark, yeah, for I guess it's lack of a better word, dark feelings, like
Mm,
but it was murk. It was murk. There was a murk there. And I don't know whether I said it since we hit record or not, but that I had a sense that I'd kind of come into this life maybe having avoided um, work in previous lives, procrastinating or like getting distracted. And like I've sort of been tasked with this, like, got to clean stuff up. We've got to clean this out. We've got to clean this up. And when I started to go to therapy and things when I was in my, mid teens or late teens, and doing a bit of hypnotherapy and sort of talking through my dreams. All of my dreams were underwater, murky
mm,
underwater. Yeah, just like always underwater. And, we were looking at cleaning up the waters as the dreams went on or as therapy went on and things like that. So I there was a great despair, and I did that 10.1. I was very conscious of my physicality, conscious of my body, felt very ugly and awful. Um, and I've had, yeah, name the soul contract name readings as well. It's in my name as well.
mm,
That we've got this like uncomfortable self-perception, which is really interesting to live through, because it's just challenging. But anyway, we come through it. But I guess, yeah, it's that when I read through my journals and what I was writing, I'm looking at it going, I was tortured. Who was torturing you? Why were you so tortured? Like it was very like, oh my God, how am I gonna live? How am I gonna get through this? Like it was grim. And
mm,
part of it, but I had that other level, that other layer of being like, I'm not gonna live out this narrative. Like, there's another way to do this. This is not like, I don't think this is like standard or where I should stay or sit. And that's, created as you say, curiosity and the pathway to like find the methods to repair. And when a lot of the lyrics that I was writing about was, things were coming up like repair and relief. Like, how do I find relief? Like, I was really like
mm,
sifting through things again and again. And I think probably as I was getting into human design, so there was a lot of that. I'm, in my 40th year. I've only found human design 2019, I recalled, was this is not long ago. 2019, it kind of dropped in. Someone recommended, that original app, the Human Design app.
oh,
Got
okay.
that, yeah. Saw a bit of that. Didn't, go too deeply into it, and it was probably took, I guess, another 2 years. I think I wrote down a date, 2021, when I started really going through it more carefully. And I've heard a lot of people say that they sort of like glimpsed it or glanced at it, and then I, almost went away and just let the genetics, not like unknowingly, let the
Mhm,
genetics start to mutate to a place that could receive it. And then, getting there, and it was totally your channel, amongst, a few other things, but you were always like the one that I kept coming back to say like, this is really providing like a lot of that foundational wisdom that is like that, I really feel like I'm getting this a sense of things at a deep layer.
mm.
um so yeah, I don't know if I encapsulated the story as well the second time. um but
So
that's
then when
the
you after you did a little bit of, like, as you would say, it's like the cellular structure kind of needs to make space for human design. I totally understand that. I get that 100%. Um, So what was it about your design? Was there anything that went, totally makes sense? Or um like did you feel like it was like a permission slip to allow you to be emotional?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, to say, because that earlier narrative of, I'm in deep despair, I'm wallowing, I don't want to, this isn't the way I should have to live. That was very dramatic and it was very extreme. It was, that 15 in the early years, being completely like just uncontainable. Um, and then being on the journey to sort of like even out or to temper it myself. But then finding human design and going, there's actually a middle, kind of like a middle ground here where the earlier stuff wasn't like I'm not gonna you don't throw it out now. You, instead of being like that's not at all what I'm gonna use, it's like, that's a regular thing that has a use and that I can now weave into, have a expectation of using this. And then riding it, that's, you ride the wave, you like, you surf, you in the ocean, you yeah, so it becomes something that can be fun and can be pleasurable, um, and that you're just ready for. You just learn how to work it. So, I mean, obviously with maturity and, because I did have that 15 acting as well, um, and the 10 wonk, like being quite wobbly, like I had all of these parts, like they were working out how to do their thing, to be their thing. Um, so there's maturity in all of that as well as coming to a point where it's to say that I don't have to, never have emotions or never feel like these depths or in this way. So, um, and yeah, knowing that that's a thing to leverage and a beauty. So you are definitely able to
Yes.
look back on those early years, which felt quite painful at the time, with more fondness. I've talked to other people about this as well. Like we almost get a reprint. I'm kind of reprinting the that feeling and that experience with the yeah, the value, I guess, of it, which in some
Hmm.
ways I knew on for some things, like I always knew that that there was a value to the experiences and the places that I was going and the people that I was with. Um, I was hanging out with, other people who were challenging and challenge lots of challenging people, and I just always saw like something in them, like this spark of divinity. Like I was just, when no one else would or did. And I was like, no, but they're just actually amazing.
Yeah.
um,
So what I hear you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the challenging moments, those dark, deep moments, and of course, your chart has so much individual energy in it, right? So, um, what I hear you say is that the melancholy actually is probably one of the most precious things that you can walk through. So that now that creative flow can just
mm,
express itself in because of that melancholy. Would that is that kind of
yeah,
okay?
absolutely. Yeah. There was this time, like years ago, I guess, when I had been in really loud, raucous, obnoxious bands. Like we were just making a lot of noise and, screaming, and it was like crazy, and I loved it. I loved the feeling of it. And now I'm going to tangent off, like, yeah, that reflecting the tension, reflecting that internal tension, and like putting it outside and like looking at it. It's really interesting, or feeling it. Um, but then there was a time when I actually realized that I'd worked through quite a lot of that extremeness, and I didn't really want to keep creating that same music. And I was at a this is before human design. I was at a junction, like, where I was like, well, what am I going to do? How do I make music that's not like this? And I actually started doing more meditation stuff, started doing more pop and electro, and trying to work out how to bring in different themes to my lyrics, or like to bring in the cosmic and the mystic, and get out of the kind of Maya. But it was, yeah, interesting because it was just somewhere in between. It was part way for both of those things, rather than it not being melancholy. And now, so I'm playing music again. I'm getting ready to do some shows. So I've pulled out all these songs from the last like decade that I've written, and they have refined themselves on the shelf. Like they've
Mhm.
just I've refined, they've refined, we've met again, and I'm like, oh, these guys, you're all neat and tidy now. Like you just like I I've always had this thing about repetition. I forget which one it is in my chart. Like, it's like building the groove. So I've just built, like, I build the groove really, really easy, and I just like, it always sits in. So when I perform the song, it's like it's exactly like that. But now the grooves are like, the rocks on the cliff of the ocean, where they've just eroded over time with like the same wind and the same wave pattern has come through, and now we've got, this just the exact pathway is there. um, and all of that sadness and that grief is still there, but I'm able to, yeah, hold it and feel it and like present it in a way that is also hopeful. That's the other tint of it, is like, and that is something about the way that I write as well, with a lot of minor notes and major notes. So it's like a sad song with clouds and rain, and then it parts and the sun goes, ah. It's like it's totally gonna be all right. And that's part of, yeah, that lesson with that deep, deep grief, is that this is not the end of the world, and it's not going to kill you, and it's not over. This is not the end. It's just the natural flow of of life. I
Mhm.
was, yeah, watching. There must have been some frequency around animals and pets in the last week, because I've seen a few things and people popping up with, analyzing their relationships with their animals. And I was watching this soul contract video, wondering what my cat's trying to tell me. Um, and oh, now I forget what I was going to say, but it was something about grief, or it was like that animals, like, and pets, they don't actually necessarily grieve the way we think that they do. They're just like, if they're going to die, they're like, we just know this is the next part, so we're just going to move on. And I guess that's part of the. I've always kind of had that as well. I don't know what will actually happen when I'm getting ready to die, but I'm not as afraid. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
not really that worried. I don't really get ultra, ultra sad. I do get ultra sad when someone dies or something dies, but I know that they've just become more. Um, when my nan passed away, I felt her omnipresence. I was like, now you're always with me. And now we just talk. And now you're just a liaison from the other world. I don't, I, you're not gone. You're just somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And what so kind of going back to like your profile of that 6'2", what's so interesting is that you were bringing Buddhahood into your early years, as well as the shadow work, and it's like things were all going on at the exact same time, so that as you lean closer to that 50 mark, that two that's always naturally there and is always holding your back, basically, right? Now you get to lean into that six in a whole new way, because you have both of those aspects of that Buddhahood and that experiential energy, and you're bringing that all. So that's going to be, I think, really fun for you. And of course, left angle cross of refinement, bringing in that refinement that you talk about, that your music refined itself as you're refining itself.
Yeah.
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 So
It
so
yeah, it feels really great. It feels good.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the contrast of feeling something that I was aware of was possible, and it is proving that I was right. Like like that I have mutated to a place that is, it's just the other end of how I felt. But it did take a courage. Like it was,
Mhm.
it was a hero's quest. And it is. I'm not saying it's over, but to be able to, and that is the defined solar plexus, to be able to really face the truth and to look at all of my ugliest aspects as a human and say, like, this is, it's just the expression of who I am, and it's the perfect, um, form that I require to give me what I need, as it is in anybody. I don't have a whole lot of judgment on people's actions. I mean, to a point, there's always stuff that we don't necessarily like anything that causes harm. I think harm is the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
But if it's not really like harmful, I'm just, delicate over that line, because that is a delicate,
Mhm.
it is a delicate line. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've always just been ready to face things and being like, come on, let's go. What are we gonna do next? How are we gonna head into this? I've just
Yeah.
been like ready.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm going to go back to that chart and I'm going to look at that 50th gate.
mm,
And I know it's designed to be the lawmaker and the values of the tribe, but it's also the lawbreaker, because in order to know what laws are sustainable and necessary,
mm,
it's designed to break the laws. So I love how you're talking about like getting in there head first. It's also a part of my design. It's hanging off of an undefined spleen as well, and breaking the law to know what law really actually matters, what law
mm.
actually brings us value. So I love that you're meeting life head on, because we have to break the laws in order to know what's going to stand up. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of them are very, very silly.
Very, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Whole
it's
bunch of
it's also,
control.
it's the rules that we have between each other, and they're the laws that are a community law or a society law, but it's the part of it, I guess, is the rules and the expectations on each other, um, and like cancel culture and things like that. I know I'm not a canceller. I do not cancel people. To me, it's just not like, it's not fair. It's not
Right.
fair,
Yeah.
because that person, like, if one of my core beliefs, which I say no, not to grip onto too tightly and not to be too attached, but it is like a core belief is that we're a reflection of each other, and
Yeah.
this is so, and that's been a thing that I've held for a long, long time. If I'm triggered or feel some type of way, um, I will look at what that is in me. What am I missing out? Like, what am I don't know, holding back in myself that is, why it's pissing me off, and how to look for it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, how to heal it, or how to like
Right.
move it into something more useful. And that's the other thing, open spleen, because it's not useful to hold on to anger and tension or pain. It's only going to turn up in the cells of our body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was another concept I've been, I don't know where we're at for time, but I've been, yeah, okay, so I follow threads. I follow thought threads, or a word that I see repeated, synchronicities in that way, and I'm like, that's what spurs me on to like do my writing, or to do my YouTube like free flow sort of talk. And it was actually, and then part of, preparing to do this, I know one of your prompts is like, what do you want to call this? And I'm not saying we need to call it this, because it was really crazy, but it was like, cosmic resonance renaissance. And it was just coming through. I don't know where from, but I kept seeing renaissance like everywhere. People were just saying it. I'm hearing it. I'm like, what is this? And maybe I'm missing something. Maybe this is really obvious, because people have been talking about, a technological renaissance. I've been looking for articles and things and going down those wormholes. But then, for me, that's me, trying to digest and, follow my own thread, my own individual pathway of, potentially this individual state that we're, changing into 2027. And so it started just, me on this whole thread about cosmic resonance. And I mean,
Mm.
speaking of frequency, this was my piece on kind of music and frequency. Been reading some really amazing, this like little book. I've been sitting on this like
Mhm.
all year. I've been sitting on this little book. Because when I read it, I have to pay attention. So I'm not, if I can't sit and absorb it, and then because if I read a few pages, I go away and I make sure I sit with that, and then I look for those correspondences for the next like month. Um,
Mhm.
but in this book, and this was like a little, I found it in like a bargain bin that they were trying to like get rid of in a shop that just anyway poked out at me. But talking about the homogenization and the limitation that we've put on sound and music, and this has been one of my pet peeves for a while, is poor quality sound, which is in our environment. Often, if you have to call the bank and you're on hold, it's like this awful
Mhm.
sound, which is actually creating the fight, flight, freeze, fawn,
Yep.
that kind of response. So and people are in shopping centers listening to poor quality noise and not realizing that this is actually causing a lot of stress and a lot of tension in our bodies. But then, with popular music and the homogenization of music, even the way that all of our pop songs are created, with a very linear, like regimented time signature, in a limited uh, tuning, and they put like a compression and a voice, uh, an auto tune that corrects the voice and squashes the tones and the resonances down. And it's like junk food. We're missing something. So when
Mhm.
there's poor quality sound, it's the sound wave, instead of it flowing, it gets cut off at the top or the bottom, and then it kind of squares off. And if we can't hear the whole note, then that's what's creating the crunch in our system. So I'm like, this whole thing around music kind of rewilding. Like we need a rewilding, where you can hear the imperfections in the voice and you throw away the time signature and you play things, and live music's probably a big part of it, especially in the home. We talked about that before. But actually being able to hear overtones and undertones and like the emotional resonance that's in the expression of music, which, if we're over compressing it, overworking it, but overworking it
Mhm.
without the intention to actually produce something that is honest and healthy and, has the full breadth of vibration in it. So I guess that's where, we've talked about sound healing and things like there's a big buzz on sound healing. And so this idea of like cosmic resonance renaissance is like, I feel I have said that so many times in the last couple of days and I stumble over it. But it feels like that's a potential in our human
Mhm.
frequency coming up, that we are going to, get those raw edges back and start to appreciate what it really means to hear. Because it's not just what we hear. Like our ears can only hear this much, but we feel everything else that's not going on. So, it's that practice and that art of getting into environments or recording things in a way that have that resonance. And I guess, you know, to do with like my meditations, I'm not saying I've nailed it or anything, but I don't I do what I can to not overcook it, if that makes, like, to not limit it too much. So if my voice is imperfect, it's I trust that it's doing what it needs to do in the moment when I'm, clocking into that open cellular feeling. It's just like practicing that trust. Um, yeah. So that's the cosmic resonance renaissance.
Love it. And the 50th gate, of course, is called the cauldron, right? So I love how you're talking about cooking that too. Um, I really appreciate this conversation because like we're watching now in real time how like Hollywood and the music industry and all these large conformity, organizations across the world, like all their tricks and tactics to
Mm,
keep us in that conformity, to keep us distracted, to keep us feeling like we aren't whole, to feel like there's
mhm,
something wrong with us or missing from us. And I believe that music has had a massive part on that.
mhm,
Even when you look at movies, what are they playing in the background that you might not even be consciously paying attention to, but that music is pulling on your emotions. It's getting you to go into fear and all of these different things. So I greatly appreciate that you're talking about this, Natalie, and you're bringing this uncooked frequency to humanity because that's like what you say, like we're going that way. We're going to this emotional intelligence where we don't have to cut the top and the bottom of the emotional wave off. We can
mhm,
experience the whole octave because that is truly what um, a right variable being is designed to touch. And
mhm,
that's where we're heading, is this right variable energy field that's out there in the future, but we're moving that way. Um, so as an emotional being, um, help the audience recognize, like, how do you know when you get to clarity so that you're not cutting the top and the bottom off of your wave, that you're actually experiencing it. But how do you know, like, what does clarity feel like to you, and then attaching that to that response mechanism? Can you do that for the audience
mm. Yeah, I'll try. I'll try.
through
I
your
guess,
experience, of course?
yeah, in my experience, in my experience, the waiting is important. So when I notice something, I just if I write, I can write notes, I can write it down, I'll save a web page. I might, read a thing. I don't know, just whatever the given thing is. Or if, I might get invited somewhere, and I can usually, because I, sacral, I can usually get a sense of if that's a mm-hmm or mm-hmm or like
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
get that, but then I can also like just park it for a minute. And sometimes that means I just don't respond to someone for a few days at all. Or, maybe I will throw up a flag and say I'll get back to you, but oftentimes I just won't even respond. And that's also a practice of because I don't think that's rude. I think it's like culture has put us in a space where we're like having to be contactable at any moment. And then we kind of feel this pressure that we need to be acting upon everybody that comes to the door. Like, no, it's not, you don't have that access to me. So even if I see a message, like, I'm like, I'll just gonna leave that. But I guess I've primed a lot of my relationships and things as well to, I guess, expect that from me. So it's not because I don't, I want to be rude. Maybe that's my missing 22 as well. But I'm also trying to demonstrate and share with people how to do that themselves. So it's not just because well, it is all about me, but it is about me and also helping other people to give themselves the permission to hold everything back like that, and to not, feel pressured or so yeah, definitely like giving it plenty of time to wait. And um like when it comes back, I don't know how it, because I don't, to me, I have different pockets, different wave pockets. Like sometimes things feel really large and it definitely needs more time, like weeks or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. If I can't afford, like, if I choose that I, something that's coming up sooner, like within days, then I can, well, this is how I feel. I feel like I can then, just move with that size wave. and go, well, I'm gonna ride that size wave. Um, and it will just appear back to me in a moment. It just comes at a moment, and then it's easy, and I can pick myself up and move towards it. So that's been one of the big things, is like I'd so because in my head, sometimes my head might actually be saying, I don't want to do this, or maybe I feel a bit tired, but if my body picks me up and takes me there, well, I'm like, well, we're doing it. And it's more like that, keeping that separation. um because sometimes it is like that. Sometimes I can't quite make sense of why I'm doing something. But if my body picks me up and takes me there, and I've given it the adequate wait time, and we're still moving towards it, then I'm going to trust that I'm moving towards something that is like the greater good. I don't know if I've told this story, but like I had an example. I started going back to some study doing interior design, and I am loving it. It's giving my I need to focus on something, so I get to sit and focus on drawing technical lines, and it's really like it's really giving. I love it. But I started going to a location that was a little bit out of the way. And then the first day that I drove there, I got stuck in a lot of traffic and it was raining. And I was like, oh, I do not want to be doing this. Like, I don't want to be stuck in Sydney traffic. But then, let's take a breath. I'm like, okay, just like stick with it, just keep going, because my body's taking me there. Like, this is what the body wanted. And then, I really love the class. I love my teachers. And then, like last week, the teacher revealed that she used to be in a band. She used to play music, and she shared like a few music videos and the songs that she'd written, and they're awesome. Her band was called The Numbers. If you want to check it out, it's like so. It was made it in 1980. She was a total babe. What a weapon! And like I was just floored, and I was like, I feel like those are the moments, and these are the pathways, the people that you meet, and those that story that I hear, and how that influences me and impacts me. And so that gives me the part of the reason why I trust, like, because if I go through that and don't let the head stop me or get in the way, I'm following the wisdom of the body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's very
Yeah.
exciting, and then that just lifts me up, and then I'm like, this is great. And I intend on, I'm going to pitch doing her chart to her, of course, because I'm very
Good.
curious. um but we'll get there. But that's the kind of threads, I guess. I don't know if that explains it, but
Hmm. Hmm.
and it
And
just feels
what I've
clear and easy. Yeah,
go yes.
I just said
Um,
it just feels easy.
mhm, mhm. Because what I've recognized after, working with people for the last decade is like there's so much stuff. I guess you guys have so much stuff and riding multiple waves at once. And for example, I had one client, she's like, "Well, I actually feel like I'm quite spontaneous." And I'm like, be interesting to know like when you put that like when that invitation came in, and go back to the thread to the beginning of when the invitation came in, because I think that the spontaneity of that emotionality is that the entrance point is way back and it just rides the wave, and then all of a sudden the clarity feels almost like spontaneity because it moves you, it
Hmm.
takes you, but the point of origin for that wave was way back, could have been months ago or years
Mm.
ago or weeks ago. Would you agree to that? Would you say that that's kind of something that you've noticed as well? Like,
Yeah, it maybe it's my, the detailed mindful focus that I have, because I'm picking up all of the potential entries, and
yes,
as well. But I totally get that. Like, and so I think it is that if they haven't noticed when it first came in, um potentially. But
yeah,
like, I also, before human design, I did make spontaneous moves, um, that did make things quite difficult. And
yes,
when I reflect,
yeah,
like, I don't necessarily think that the thing that I did was necessarily wrong. I
Mhm.
may have made exactly the same move in life, but how I entered that caused more upheaval than if I had have just waited for that timing. So,
Yes.
it's that removing the concern about missing out as well, because I still think that some of these big things that I did, I probably still would have done them. I just would have entered it into it on the day of least resistance.
Right.
um
Yes.
by waiting for that moment. And that is like when you do think about like ocean surfing and waves, like that's it. You have to dive in at the right time or you're gonna get crushed.
Yep.
Like that's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Awesome. So when you're working with your clients, Natalie, is there anything around music um, and charts? Is there anything that you're starting to explore and play with there? Um, I know that I think I shared in the mentorship, like astrology charts or like astrology signs have different frequencies to them and hexagrams have different frequencies to them. Have you started to play in that realm at all?
Hmm. I'm not sure. Like I have had a few musicians, but I get all sorts of like the people that I have spoken with have different kind of creative ventures. So I guess like I'll probably get more experience and more data with more musicians coming in. With the 12 in my North Node, it's probably gonna be happening. But I guess, yeah, from where I'm at currently with, I'm just helping people to understand their own like flow and rhythm state. So maybe I'm not as progressed
Okay.
with noticing, that level of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's no,
But
that's
I
good.
mean, what I did with because part of the mentorship has been supporting us to work out our program or have clarity for our program. So like
Yeah.
I've been doing one-on-one sessions, like one-off sessions. Ideally, for me personally, I would like to do like a package of sort of three, because like that's part of where I feel like you can like move into what your your filter of consciousness is, and then looking at like the spaces where you need to kind of decondition, or looking at the shadow aspects, and then kind of time. I just think it is a process but you can still gain a lot, I think, from one-offs. But I see a lot of people getting repeat readings anyway, because it's a lot of information, and you can, just starting in one place generally, especially if people I'm seeing really haven't touched human design at all. So
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
really picking up people that, they may have dabbled in things like seen a medium or been interested in the spiritual sort of stuff, had an inkling of energies, but maybe they're not, doing anything too studious with it. Um, but yeah, the program that I sort of did build out was really leaning into my 9 and that 52 of creating the steps that you would need to move through a project. So, the things that I get to do and have done, like making EPs, making like sort of small albums, making music videos. Like I've, filmed, directed, edited, done set design, run the event that it got played at, all of these things. And they are standing up the test of time. Refinement, they're actually just, I don't know, they just do their own thing. For me, it's like reflecting on work that I've done, it gets better with age. Um, but it is like that's my intention with the larger kind of coaching that I want to do, is to help people to, yeah, move off that sort of standstill, or like understand what the steps are and like how they can actually move through what they need to move through to create the thing. um, so maybe it's a bit practical in that sense, but we'd go
Mhm.
through the chart, we'd lean into the chart, we'd lean into those prosperity gates and the openness, and just sort of like bring all of that through and into it. And then, if people needed um, different processes, like they've got a wealth of sort of processes to tap into like body work, how to ask your body questions, and getting yeah, that's through some of that shadow work and sort of dealing with some of that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like
Beautiful.
my process for creatives. And because it can really be pretty much anything, I think. I don't know, the sky's the
Mhm,
limit to me.
mhm.
Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but you know, it can be music and it could be art and it just can be anything that's I mean, I think we're all creative. I think we're all creative creatures creating our reality. So why not make it like the best show you've ever seen?
Right. Yes. No kidding. Excellent. Yeah, and what I love, right? I look at that right variable mind, and I also have that as well. So it's interesting. Um, I feel like the process there is like we reach out and we can see. I don't know if I want to say the future, but it's like we can see the project done, and then reverse engineering it. And by the time the project is there, what I love is that you talk like it refines over time, and I totally believe that. I believe that there's a Mandela effect. I don't know if you know about the Mandela effect, how the more we awaken, things the timelines change.
Mm-hmm.
Things just because now we've adjusted. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I love about that right variable. I feel as though that exactly that articulation is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
I love it. So you help creatives really create a step-by-step process to just like step in and be confident, right? And let go of like all these connotations and these things that happen in life
Mm-hmm.
and this conformity so that they can reclaim inspiration and really
Exactly.
reclaim their own frequency and lean in, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
love it.
that's it. It's exactly it's the reclaiming because I guess that's what I've experienced with human design. I you know despite music always being within me so naturally, we talked about you know I've taken it for granted. You take it for granted because it's so easy. It's so second nature. And you know maybe and also I did a lot of work through the challenge of articulating and you know getting better at using my voice and learning what my voice sounded like and how to move it and how to move things through me and you know anyway all of the depth of that but yeah human design definitely helped me to and you and that through via you as well like pointing to that to say you know this is such a huge part of me and that you know awakening to give it time to make sure that I give it space and give it the space that it needs and that it has space in my life to and it just is like yeah
Mm-hmm.
I will do that
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yep.
but
I
yeah
love it.
that's I guess that's I did a creative flow course, conscious creative flow course. That was another prompt as well. So like I've got that as well. That sort of talks through some of those barriers of the individual who's creating things that may not be accepted by the collective like right away. And then so you judge yourself or you think, oh, I'm not doing anything that's contributing in like a meaningful way, da da da, all the stories. And so that's, you know, it's about cutting that narrative because you are mutating the air like the environment within without like the timeline that like you said the mandala it's you know it goes beyond what is right in front of our limited nose this is just such a tiny part of what's it is to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. Well, my friend, we're just over an hour here, I think. Um, so is there anything in closing that you would like to impart with the audience? Of course, your free meditation is going to be below. They can connect with you. Take a look at your creative flow course and lean into that. But is there anything that you just want to pop in for final words?
um I'm like, where I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, I think I've sort of like been talking about it. I think that is my sort of final stuff is like the importance of like not trying to predict outcomes or self-limit because you think it's not worthy or you think that it's not, it's just all of those things that stop yourself from actually releasing what you need to express. Um, and just yeah, it's just that letting go piece, I think. Let go and feel
Yeah.
good with an open spleen.
I would agree. Awesome. All right, friends. Thank you very much for your time, Natalie. And again, if you want to connect and go deep into the meditative process that Natalie has available for you, I would highly recommend it. As well, connect with her if you want to walk through your chart in a more profound and deep way with someone who has honed patience in their lives, so that you can see yourself and reflect on a different aspect of who you are. Connect with Natalie. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.